some of our latest findings, one paper that I worked really closely on that I found really fascinating was around the Defend the Atlanta Forest movement in Atlanta. I don't know, in Georgia. I don't know if many of you are familiar with that, but it's essentially a group of protesters who are like trying to defend this forest based in Atlanta that has been bought and kind of named Cop City. It's bought by the city of Atlanta and will benefit like police training. So it's essentially going to be like a 40-acre police training center where people from all over the country can come and get trained. And so, understandably, like cutting down 40 acres of forest is pretty horrible. And on top of that, like amidst the movements to defund the police and rising police violence, to have this like billions and billions of dollar training institute is really looked down upon. So there's been a lot of protests, and there's been someone died, and there's just been like nationwide calls to stop or block Cop City. And we did a paper that looked at the media response to that and really tried to hold the media accountable to the narratives that they were telling. And we found that, out of, I think we looked at 8 newspapers, only 2 of them really questioned the narrative of the government or the like authorities in Atlanta, and all the rest completely like demonized protesters. So that was really interesting because a lot of like, environmental protests have been like, I think now they call them like eco-terrorists, right? So like, how do we use the word terrorism? And now that word has been thrown around, or a lot of protesters have been like labeled domestic terrorists. It's a really scary finding, to have like any sort of dissent to a movement or to funding or to a government, and how they can easily yield that term against you, even within the US. And another really interesting finding another interesting paper that we had come out recently was looking at like their surveillance system in the US. So not only like a surveillance camera like on the side of a building, but surveillance through our phones, surveillance through different like documents, anything online, and just how that's like ballooned and absolutely gotten huge since post 9/11. Obviously with like the rise in technology, that has gotten bigger since 2011 as well. But the way of surveilling not only like foreign, people trying to interact with people in the US or trying to enter the US, but even like citizens in the US, and, people of color, LGBTQIA plus, any sort of like left socialist, kind of like communist leaning, that is like completely targeted and really heavily surveilled within this country. So I think that's something that, is really scary to me, because we all have a phone, right? Like, or at least we know someone with a phone, or we get on the internet. And so that's a huge cost of war, is the surveillance that we have.